Picture this: a starless night where time seems to fold in on itself, a silence so thick you could almost hear the threads of reality unweaving. In this cosmic void, shadows stir. Not just any shadows, but 13 of them, gliding with purpose, carved from the fabric of forgotten realms. Hovering in this dim expanse is a lone figure, draped in obsidian robes that shimmer like the night sky itself. He is the forgotten emperor of the Void Walkers, and tonight, his council convenes once more. Now, if you're expecting an emperor decked out in gold and jewels, sitting on a throne of marble, think again. This emperor isn't about pomp or earthly grandeur. Rather, he commands the intangible, the shadows left behind when stars burn out, the spaces between thoughts, and the silent echoes where memories fade. Sound like a villain from a poorly written fantasy novel. Maybe, but this is no ordinary tale. It is a story stitched through eons, lost in the folds of cosmic folklore, whispered in forgotten tongues, and preserved only by the faintest glimmers of myth. What were the Void Walkers? Why was their emperor forgotten? And why does the council consist of exactly 13 shadows? Imagine ancient astronomers staring into the abyss, afraid not of monsters hiding behind trees, but of the very fabric of nothingness swallowing the light. In the oldie world, where stars were gods and darkness was a presence, this emperor ruled a liminal realm, between matter and memory, between being and oblivion. Folklorists have long wondered about the origins of these tales. The earliest references come from the star charts of the Mesopotamians, some 4,000 years ago. Cuneiform tablets speak of Lugalilama, which translates roughly to king of the spaces between. Unlike the gods who battled for thunder or fertility, Lugalilama was a sovereign of absence itself. His council, the 13 shadows, were said to be fragments of himself, agents sent to govern different voids. The gaps in human consciousness, the silent places between celestial bodies, and the unnoticed moments slipping through time. This might be the strangest thing about the forgotten emperor. Unlike other mythical rulers who asserted dominance with fire, sword, or flood, he reigned through what was not there. His power was woven from silence, gaps, and absence, the very essence of anti-presence. Today, we might liken him less to a monarch and more to an ancient prototype of the modern concept of negative space, or the psychological idea of liminality, the transitional phases where identity dissolves and mystery takes hold. But there's more to this story, something deeply resonant about why a figure so important vanished from collective memory. In the era of oral tradition, where stories were currency and meaning was communal, the forgotten emperor's realm was a kind of cultural blind spot. People preferred to latch onto tangible heroes and vivid monsters rather than abstract concepts of nothingness. Over centuries, as human understanding of the cosmos shifted from mythos to logos, the emperor's domain became a vacuum in stories, an unattended shadow that seeped out of history like smoke. Yet, what these tales really reveal is how ancient civilizations confronted the unknown not with denial, but with personification, assigning a face, even a council, to the void. It was a way to wrestle with the unsettling idea that not all things could be known, seen, or controlled. The council's 13 members themselves represent various facets of emptiness: the silence of forgotten names, the hunger of the black stars, the chill in the breath of dawn, and so forth. Let's pause here and imagine the scene. The emperor seated beneath a sky swirling with nebulae, the 13 shadows circling his throne like restless smoke, their forms flickering between something visible and nothing at all. You can almost feel the weight of space's cold indifference. Hear the faint hum of cosmic winds threading through the void. Smell the faint trace of ancient stardust long turned to ash. In 12th century Iceland, sagas touched on a similar concept called Huldufolk, or hidden folk, beings who occupied the invisible in-between spaces of the natural world. While these elves and spirits weren't void walkers per se, they shared the principle of governing that which was unseen but deeply felt. Scholars like Snorri Sturluson hinted at realms beyond the physical, shadowy domains where otherworldly councils might convene. Though the forgotten emperor himself was absent from Norse manuscripts, the underlying thematic presence of shadowy intermediaries lingers. This reveals something deeper about the human psyche and its relationship with darkness. Like ancient therapy sessions, these myths externalize the unknowable parts of ourselves and the universe. anxieties, losses, and the existential dread of emptiness. The emperor and his council embodied the acceptance of void instead of denial, a harsh lesson for societies clinging to order. Fast forward to modern times, and where have these stories gone? The emperor's absence in current folklore reflects a broader cultural shift. We replace the shadowy council with science, measurements, and empirical certainty. The void. It's now a black hole on a computer screen or a gap in data, no longer a mystical ruler but a physical phenomenon. The council has become data points, and the emperor, a metaphor lurking in the corners of quantum physics. Yet, if you listen closely to late-night astronomers or the murmurs of theoretical physicists, you'll detect echoes of those ancient tales. The emperor's influence is masked but persistent, a reminder that even our most advanced knowledge cannot fully dispel the mystery of nothingness. But the Void Walkers were more than just cosmic shadow monarchs. Their story was intertwined with human notions of the afterlife, transition, and memory. The 13 Shadows were said to escort the souls of the dead through the darkness between worlds, guardians of liminal spaces where neither life nor death fully held sway. This is not unlike the role of psychopomps in various cultures, creatures or spirits guiding souls beyond mortal existence. In Japanese folklore, for example, the yurei are restless spirits caught in shadowy limbo, while ancient Egyptians believed in a juat, a dark underworld ruled by enigmatic deities managing passage and judgment. The Forgotten Emperor's Council echoes these archetypes, but stands apart by governing not just death, but the very essence of absence across cosmic scales. To illustrate this, let me share a fragment from an ancient Mesopotamian incantation found by Assyriologist Stephanie Daly. The text invokes the 13 Shadows as unseen judges of silence and oblivion, tasked with balancing memory and oblivion, preventing the world from tipping too far into chaos or forgetfulness. It reads in translation, "May the 13 unseen bind the threads of forgetting, guide wandering shades through emptiness unending, hold the veils between heartbeats and stars. Imagine a world where forgetting was as dangerous as remembering too much." This duality is strikingly relevant to us. The emperor and his council symbolized a delicate equilibrium, much like modern mental health requires balancing memories and traumas. In this sense, they were like the medieval social workers or original environmental activists of the cosmos, regulating that which must remain hidden for the world to carry on. But beneath this behavior lay something more disturbing, a warning encoded in shadows. The council's number 13 was never an accident. While now mostly associated with superstition and bad luck in antiquity, 13 symbolized transformation, cycles, and sometimes upheaval. It represented the breaking point between worlds, the moment when order slips into chaos and new realities emerge. The Emperor's Council was not merely passive. They whispered of extinction and renewal, of the thin edge where creation meets oblivion. This dual role of destruction and preservation makes the Forgotten Emperor a messianic figure of cosmic cycles, an entity whose forgotten worship hints at lost understandings about life, death, and rebirth on universal scales. Let me take you back further, into a story recorded by the 16th century Italian historian Girolamo Cardano, who wrote about a secretive cult called the Shadow Liturgy. According to his notes, though wildly debated and possibly fabricated, the cult worshipped a nameless sovereign whose council watched the thinning between worlds. They believed that these shadows could slip into the living world to steal away lost souls, but also to return whispers of forgotten wisdom. Whether true or myth, this tale reflects the haunting aura surrounding the emperor's figure, part guardian, part thief, and part prophet. The emperor itself is a mirror in which ancient peoples saw the fragile edge of reality, the precipice before the fall into darkness. By the time the Age of Enlightenment dawned, the emperor and his council slipped almost entirely from popular imagination, replaced by rational explanations and dismissive skepticism. Our ancestors' willingness to inhabit a universe filled with shadows was supplanted by light bulbs and telescopes. We traded mystery for knowledge, depth for clarity. But this should be no surprise. Every culture moves through phases, and what is forgotten often holds the seeds for rediscovery. So what should we remember from these stories? The Forgotten Emperor and his 13 Shadows teach us that absence is not mere nothingness. It is a vital dimension of existence. The void is not emptiness to fear, but a necessary space where creativity, memory, and transformation occur. Like the silence between notes in a symphony, the shadows between stars compose the cosmic melody. In a world fast drowning in noise, distraction, and certainty, the Emperor's tale invites us to embrace the shadows within ourselves, those unnamed fears, the forgotten memories, and the silent spaces where meaning breathes quietly. It nudges us to see the value in what we avoid, the empty rooms in our hearts and histories where new stories can take root. And so, as the forgotten Emperor rises once more in our imagination, seated in the dark glow of distant galaxies, with 13 shadowy counselors circling, his story becomes less about loss and more about potential. The void is not an enemy, but a mysterious companion on the journey through existence. Perhaps it is time to stop chasing only light and brightness. Instead, let us learn from a ruler born not of tangible kingdoms, but of shadows and silence, whose forgotten lore still pulses beneath the surface of our modern world. Because sometimes, the most powerful emperors are those who govern the spaces we never thought to watch, the shadows we never dared to name, and the silence where the deepest truths lie waiting. And now, as the council's whispers echo through the night, we turn to uncover their stories, because in each shadow lies a tale worth remembering. As the dark and misty council of the 13 shadows continues to swirl around the forgotten emperor, the very essence of their power lies in the telling and the untelling of stories. And here lies the first paradox of the Void Walkers. Their strength was not just in what they held, but in what they erased. You see, this might be the strangest thing about the forgotten emperor. He was a sovereign not over lands or lives, but over the spaces between, the forgotten, the erased. Where other rulers conquered realms, he mastered absence itself. This was not tyranny as we know it, but an eternal dance with oblivion, with forgetting, and with silence. Consider the ancient tale of the Gates of Oblivion, whispered among the tribes of the Eurasian steppes around 3000 BCE. It speaks of a portal watched vigilantly by 13 shadowy figures, neither benevolent nor malevolent but necessary. When a soul approached the gates, these shadows performed a ritual of forgetting, weaving threads of amnesia, so that the weight of memory would not drag the spirit back to the world of the living. The emperor in this story was the balance keeper, condemning neither to eternal pain nor to endless remembrance, but to the liminal hush where existence quietly begs release. Imagine standing before these gates, an endless night behind you, the soft echo of something like wind but no air, and the silent watch of 13 luminous shadows. You can almost feel the cold touch of forgetting brushing your skin. This story was more than myth. It revealed an ancient human truth. In many ways, the forgotten emperor and his council were like nature's version of security cameras, ever watching the fragile boundary between being and non-being. Their governance symbolized humanity's need to contain and negotiate the disorders of memory and loss. It was a psychological safeguard, like ancient therapy sessions, externalizing the torment of grief, trauma, and the dread of oblivion. Their absence from our stories today shows how uncomfortable modern cultures have become with the mystery of forgetting and silence. The Emperor's realm is the shadowy attic of human consciousness, long sealed off, dusty, and neglected. But the power of the 13 shadows wasn't limited to death or the afterlife. In the oldie world, their influence stretched deep into the living psyche. Each shadow represented an aspect of absence felt in everyday life. The silence of forgotten names guided the lost identities of wanderers and exiles. The hunger of the black stars gnawed at the ambitions of mortals who dared dream too vast. The chill in the breath of dawn warned of opportunities slipping into nothingness before they could be grasped. In this sense, the council was like the medieval social workers of the cosmos, moderating the balance between presence and absence in human affairs. We glimpse this in the medieval European concept of white hollow, or spirit spaces, pockets of existence between the physical and spiritual realms where unseen forces governed fate and will. Folklorists like Catherine Briggs documented stories of shadowy councils convening in the twilight, invisible yet potent, who intervened during times of crisis, especially in 14th century England during the plague years. Survivors remembered whispers of shadow kings, who collected the fading breaths of the dying, preventing the chaos that might arise should souls refuse to move on. The Forgotten Emperor's Council echoes this motif, embodying the collective effort to maintain cosmic order through absence and silence. Yet beneath this behavior lay a darker warning. The 13 Shadows were also heralds of transformation through disappearance and decay. As the number 13 symbolized in many ancient cultures, transformation and upheaval, they embodied the destructive forces necessary for creation. The Emperor's power was a reminder that extinction was not annihilation, but part of a greater cycle, the ultimate canvas on which the cycles of life, death, and rebirth were painted. The delicate balance was maintained not by intervention alone, but by the readiness to relinquish and forget. The Council's whispers cautioned that order could collapse if this balance failed, plunging worlds into formless chaos. This theme echoes in the myth of the Ereshkigal's Gate in Sumerian lore, Ereshkigal being the queen of the underworld, her realm a void critical for cosmic rhythms. Here, too, 13 attendants were said to keep the gates, guiding souls through dark transition, but also implying the essential void that precedes new life. Though the Forgotten Emperor's direct connection to Ereshkigal remains speculative, the parallels shine a light on how distinct civilizations wrestled with shadows as guardians of both destruction and renewal. Moving forward in time, we see fascinating attempts to reclaim or interact with these powers. The Renaissance-era occultists, inspired by the cryptic writings of Girolamo Cardano, sought audiences with invisible hierarchies, sometimes referencing a nameless sovereign and his shadow council in their alchemical rituals. These secret societies, shrouded in both myth and secrecy, aim to harness the liminal energies of the void, hoping to access knowledge beyond the visible world. Yet, as enlightenment grew, such mystical endeavors increasingly fell into disrepute, symbolizing humanity's growing embrace of rationality at the expense of mystery. The stories tell us something else. The erased emperor and his shadows were a necessary myth for the ancient psyche to accept the unknown without dread. In our contemporary world, however, they have vanished into obscurity. The void they ruled is now interpreted through scientific models, quantum vacuum fluctuations, black holes swallowing light, the dark energy accelerating cosmic expansion. The myth has transformed into equations and astrophysical data points, the Council reduced to footnotes in quantum theory. This should be no surprise. In a culture obsessed with visibility and proof, spaces and silences risk being overlooked or trivialized. But the Emperor's story invites us to reconsider. In our noisy age, overwhelmed with stimuli and distractions, the lesson of the Forgotten Emperor is more vital than ever. Just as a symphony needs silence between notes, as a painting needs empty space to define shape, the human spirit requires shadowed rooms for reflection, grief, and renewal. These are the very spaces the Council once governed, a realm not of void but of potential, where the seeds of creativity and transformation take root unseen. Think back to the Japanese concept of ma, the conscious void or negative space between things, embraced as an aesthetic and spiritual ideal. The Forgotten Emperor's domain resonates with this tradition, reminding us that silence and absence are woven into the fabric of existence and beauty. It's a soft but profound echo reverberating across civilizations, calling us back to a more nuanced, respectful relationship with the unknown. So how can we honor this legacy? How can the tales of the Forgotten Emperor and his 13 shadows enrich our lives today? By embracing silence and absence as essential, by acknowledging the shadows within ourselves and society that are often feared or dismissed, by understanding that forgetting, too, is a kind of remembering, the mind's way of making space for healing and growth, and by recognizing the unknown not as a threat to be conquered, but as a companion on the path of life. In the end, the Forgotten Emperor is less a figure lost to time, and more a guardian of the deep mysteries we have yet to fully understand. His council in their 13 shifting forms remind us that the spaces between stories, the unspoken, the unseen, the silently feared, are where the most powerful truths dwell. They beckon us to look into shadowed realms without fear, to reclaim the wisdom inherent in absence, and to remember that sometimes what is forgotten is what shapes us most profoundly. And so, as the cosmic dance of the 13 shadows whispers through the corridors of forgotten lore, perhaps it is time for us to listen again, not with the light of certainty, but with the humility of mystery, to sit quietly in the spaces where stories dissolve and find not emptiness, but invitation. For in the forgotten emperor's silence lies a cosmic heartbeat, steady and eternal, calling us back to the ancient rhythms of shadow and light. Let this be an invitation. Next time you encounter silence, shadow, or absence in your life, pause and breathe. See these not as empty voids to be feared or filled, but as sacred spaces where transformation begins, where the forgotten can be remembered anew. Because in honoring the forgotten emperor of the void walkers and his council, we reconnect with a timeless wisdom, a reminder that the deepest truths are often whispered in shadows, where light alone cannot reach.